I am once again here with Bonnie Badenoch. She's just finished up 2 days of her wonderful training on play therapy and how the brain fits with that. And I had talked to her at lunch, but there was a question, a really important question that we hadn't gotten to yet. So she has agreed to sit down and talk with me a little bit more. There's a myth out there, Bonnie, and I'd like you to address it. And the myth is that if you meditate enough, you'll become mentally healthy. And you'll probably become empathic and compassionate, and it's just in the meditation. And you said that's not quite accurate, and I'd like you to talk about that if you don't mind.
Absolutely. There's so many benefits to meditation that it's a really wonderful practice to do, and that needs to be said first. That it really weaves together parts of the brain that give us a much better quality of life, that does give us more empathy, that gives us a better quality of emotional calmness and all of that. But what meditation can't do is that if we have been wounded, often in childhood, but sometimes trauma happens later in life, those traumas are held tucked away in the brain and in brain circuitry that's separated off, and that no amount of meditation can just dig out just by being meditation. And so with meditation, what we're doing is building a second set of circuitry that allows us to function better when we're in that circuitry. But when we get triggered by these old wounds, then the same old behavior patterns and feelings and everything come up until we actually engage ourselves in inviting these painful or frightening places into consciousness, and usually with the help of another who is a caring person, begin to transform these so that they can integrate in the whole brain. So it can only take us so far, and can sometimes
so it can't
be
just short-circuit this need for therapy. No.
An expert like Jack Kornfield, who is both a long-term meditator and many would say a Buddhist master, also became a psychologist because he discovered this was true about himself, that even though he had meditated in solitude for many years, that when he came back into society, he ran into these parts of his brain that were triggered by being more in relationship again.
And what he's called it something.
He calls it the monk's defense.
I like that.
I do too.
Now, can meditation ever make people, I don't know if worse is the right word, but can it ever hurt people?
Well, I think the kind of short answer to that is that sometimes meditation works certainly to quiet the mind, and if we've had a lot of painful traumatic experience, sometimes in the quieting of the mind, some of that old traumatic experience gets released and can bring on quite a rush of anxiety and pain and fear at times. So in using it in therapy, and helping people with that, I always spend time working with them in the room for short periods of time, and us together really seeing if this is something that their system is able to handle yet. And if it's not, we do other things to work with releasing some of this old pain, and then we go back and try it again until their system is ready to go into calmness without simultaneously going into upset.
So it's not a universal solution?
No. I don't believe there are any universal solutions, although the best one we probably know about at this point is that if we are in warm, connected relationships that are very respectful of each person, or when we're babies, where the parent really sees us and is with us in a delighted, curious, warm way and really sees who we are, that's probably the best way to weave together a healthy brain throughout life. And we know that in old age, without those good connections, the brain has a tendency to fall apart much faster and the quality of life to be much worse.
And one of the things you talked about a lot in the last 2 days is that if you're not fortunate enough to get that kind of parenting, there's still hope.
Oh, absolutely. Our brains are changing all the time, and when we're in the presence of people who can work with us in a warm, connected way, then our brains begin to still try to move into these integrated patterns that create this good quality of life. And a warm interpersonal relationship is the best way to do that. We're designed to recover. Our brains are always moving toward attachment, and our brains are always trying to move into greater patterns of integration. And so when we get that help, it's just a natural unfolding process.
Now I'm going to ask you a very open-ended question. If it's too open-ended, let me know, okay, and I'll make it more specific. I'd like to hear in 5 minutes what you have to say, just a general overview of mindfulness and mindlessness.
Okay.
Can you do that in 5 minutes?
I think
We can turn it on again.
it's just such an interesting thing.
Yeah.
So much of the talk these days is that as we become more mindful and we do these meditative practices, that we develop this capacity to be in a more integrated state. And that's true. That's very, very true. But in the last decade or so, we've begun to pay attention more and more to another network in the brain that we call the default network, because it's turned on so much of the time. And that default network has part of it up here in the front part of the brain, and the other pole is toward the back part of the brain, and it's constantly working to integrate all of our experiences into the meaningful story of our lives. And it's actually on the most when we're just daydreaming and not doing anything in particular with our minds. So that's why we can say that both mindfulness and mindlessness can have an integrative impact on our brain. But this circuit also can't pick up those dissociated, painful experiences that are locked away in the limbic and bring them up. In the limbic region is where we hold these painful memories. So we have to let those come up into awareness before either network, either mindfulness or this default network, can help weave it into the overall pattern of the brain and the overall meaningful story of our lives.
So mindfulness and mindlessness are both present in the default network?
Well, no, mindlessness, when we're being mindless, the default network has the most energy, but it's on all the time anyway. Mindfulness requires focused attention. The essence of mindfulness is training our mind to be able to be present in a particular way. There's all different styles of doing this, and be able to sustain that over a period of time.
Now is that, and we had talked about before, is that the focused attention, or is that a more diffuse awareness?
It can be either way. The way I like to practice it is to have a period of focused attention, which really strengthens our capacity to stay put and attend and calmness to whatever's going on, and then to open into receptivity, and again, but still holding on to that sense of focus, welcome whatever needs to come in from my body, from my thoughts and feelings, and anything coming in from the outside. And as a therapist, that includes, clients bringing tremendous amount of perhaps emotional intensity, and being able in calmness to receive that, and then that's what helps change their brain as well.
Now I've heard, is it true that there's a component of creativity when you're in mindlessness? That if you just completely go mindless, that sometimes aha moments can come to you?
Well, I think so. I mean, what makes sense to me about that is that when our left hemisphere keeps trying to chew or think about something, even if it's just remembering a name or a number or something, we're limiting ourselves to things that are kind of right here close to working memory, and there's that chewing on it, which prevents our whole system as a whole from just kind of offering up the answer. I think it was Edison who got almost all of his ideas when he would take afternoon naps. And the guy that discovered the carbon rings, I think, discovered that in the shower or in a dream somewhere. So there is a way that when our mind lets go, there's the possibility of weaving old things into new patterns, and that something wonderful can come from that.
Now, where would a person, if they wanted to learn more from you, which I think a lot of people who are watching this will want to do, they can read your 2 books. Say them again for if the person happens to watch this video and not the other one.
Okay. The first one is about 2 years old now, and it's called Being a Brain-Wise Therapist, a Practical Guide to Interpersonal Neurobiology. And the second one, which is literally out this week, is called The Brain Savvy Therapist Workbook.
Okay, great. And do you have a website?
I do. Our website is nurturingtheheart.org and nurturingtheheart.com. And you get there by either route.
And do you list your upcoming events?
Yes.
You do? Okay.
Yeah, there's something that says Bonnie's calendar, and then everything that's coming up fairly soon is listed with dates and all that, and then stuff coming up in 2012 is on there now, just as places that I'll be.
Okay, great. Well, thank you.
I'm a very fortunate person that I get to do this.
Yeah, I mean, you were telling me
Stephanie.
the agenda, and you're a very busy person. Yes, well, thank you very much. Thank you for the last 2 days, and thank you for these videos and for lunch. It was wonderful.
Well, thank you for everything. I had a great time.
Yes. Anything else you'd like to say before I turn off the video?
I think so.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.